And when you get a very high flow come down the river, it piles up really pretty high over that spillway. It flows over, and that's really what happened during that event. And it backs up water into those low-lying areas upstream. So, but it really wasn't a function of misoperation of this dam at all, because before that flood event, we were having the normal spring high flows. And so the water level can only go down as far as the discharge capacity you have in this plant. And so that was the issue. So you couldn't really draw it down. And then we get the big flood. It comes high over the spillway, and again causes that flooding upstream. I don't know, Ivan, if you've heard though, but Senator D'Alessandro, who represents this area, he introduced an amendment to the state's capital budget to modify this dam to put additional spillway gates to lower the crest of this dam, and then to keep the lake level high during the summertime with collapsible spillway gates. And so he introduced an amendment to the capital budget to add $1.5 million to do that work on this dam, and that will help with the flooding problem. So if we had another flood event, we'll have gates on the top of this spillway here that we can drop down that will lower the water surface here. It will not eliminate flooding, but it does reduce the extent of flooding. And we hope to be getting that. If that capital budget gets approved, we'd be doing that work over the next 2 years.
Now, in the last 18 months or so, it would seem as though we've had 2 or 3 high water events. I don't know whether you call them 50-year or 100-year floods, but it seems to me, and whether it's a permanent pattern or just a circumstantial event where we've had 2 or 3 of these major floods, am I correct in that these were 50 and 100-year flood events?
Well, they were, we're talking about 3 floods that we've had in New Hampshire here. The first one being the Columbus Day flood of 2005, in October 2005. That largely it was a 100-year event in the southwestern part of the state, not around here as much. Although we still had flooding during the following week here, but not near as high as they had in the southwestern part of the state. But the 2 floods we've experienced serious floods here, the Mother's Day flood of 2006 and the April flood, which was even worse than the Mother's Day flood. The April flood did approach the 100-year flood, and it was a 100-year flood at other basins around the southeastern part of the state. So, you're absolutely right, though, in your characterization. We've had 3 very serious floods approaching at least the 100-year flood in a year's time. Then that is serious. It is, I don't think it's really a function of, the climate change that we all have been hearing about. They do say that might be a manifestation of climate change, but that's going forward. And I want to talk about that a little bit. But the point is, if you look back in the 30s, where the 2 other real serious floods of record in this basin, we had two worse floods, actually, than the floods we just experienced back in 36 and 38. That actually caused failures of dams upstream on the Piscataqua during the 36 and 38 floods. They were worse, and they were within a year and a half of each other as well. So maybe history is repeating itself to a degree. But yeah, we have heard talk, up here, when we look at predictions of, the effects of climate change, what they are talking about in this part of the country is probably the same amount of rainfall over the year on average, but it'll come in more intense storms. What they're saying is the frequency of storms that are 2 inches or greater will increase. And now our typical storm is about an inch. We get maybe an inch of rain on average every 72 hours. I think we're going to have longer periods of time between rainfall events is what they're saying, and where you may have higher rainfall events, again, increasing the frequency of 2-inch rainfalls.
Well, it would seem to me if the environmentalists and some of the climatologists are right, we may be seeing, and if my numbers are accurate, I think these last storms have been in the order of 5 and 10 inches of rain in 24 hours. So they're pretty significant events. And, I mean, if these were to happen on an increasing frequency, presumably that would get a lot of people's attention. But I wonder, what does the DES, the DES leases this dam and others, and let's just say you know from the weather reports that 2 or 3 days out, a week out, there's going to be a major weather event, inches of rain. Does the DES do any coordinating upstream, downstream?
Yes, we do. Like say, in the case of, we've had that serious April event. We had predictions just last Friday, a week ago, about a similar event, 4 to 6 inches. And we jump into action, and we call the operators of dams that we know we have flood-prone communities either downstream or upstream, and make sure, like say in the case of this dam, that they did have all their outlets open. That upstream, they take precautions as well up at Glen Falls. At the Corps of Engineers, they're further upstream. They have the large flood control project that controls about a sixth of this drainage basin. We made sure that they had their gates closed so that anything that came into them, they would store, so it wouldn't affect the communities down here. And then again, in this case here, because we got a problem upstream, we wanted to make sure these folks had all their gates open that they could so they could pass whatever did come to them. Again, the capacity is very limited. You see water spilling over the dam now. They've got this hydropower unit operating now. So even though they have everything open, you could still get flooding upstream if we were to have that high event. Fortunately, last Friday we didn't have it. But we don't do it just on the Piscataqua. We got other issues as well. The Suncook, the Salmon Falls River, other river bases. We have dams where we have communities that could be affected by dam operations, and we try to coordinate that.
Does the Franklin Falls Dam have any impact on this?
No, it doesn't. The Franklin Falls Dam is on the Merrimack, and so that catches water. It's a flood control dam that catches water that comes down the Pemigewasset. But it would serve to protect Manchester, but not this neighborhood here. The only dam upstream of here is the Everett Dam. The only flood control dam upstream of here is the Everett
Dam. The Everett Dam looks extremely large. It would seem to me that they might have a tremendous impact. For instance, if they knew there was a storm event coming, they could draw down and store a lot of water and restrict water flow here.
They can, and they do. That's exactly what they do. That's what they did in October. That's what they did in May of 2006, and that's what they did in this last event. They normally have that lake very low. And as you say, if you've been up there, it's a very, very high dam, so they have a lot of storage. They can store 6 inches of runoff, not just 6 inches of rain, 6 inches of runoff in the drainage basin upstream of that. The unfortunate thing is that dam only controls 1/6 of the drainage area of this dam. This dam has a drainage area of 200-something square miles, so that it's about 210, 220 square miles. Every bit of runoff in that 210 square mile area is going to get here eventually. The Corps of Engineers controls 1/6 of that and will hold back that until the flood comes by, and then they'll release it gradually. And honestly, they were still releasing a month later. They were still releasing flood waters from the April 2007 flood a month later. Because they have to do it gradually. They release it at a rate of about 1,200 cubic feet per second, a non-damaging rate.
Now, does the DES coordinate the Everett Dam and the activities of some of the other dams that have an impact right here?
Well, the Corps of Engineers owns that dam, and they manage that dam. We do coordinate with them. We're in communication with them. And like I say, this predicted event of a week ago that never really did materialize, we were in